I am Robyn Miller.
And I'm Jane Daly.
And we're going to be talking today about more tips for tighter writing.
There's more?
There's so many more.
There's more?
I think we talked about this before. I don't know that, I mean, the list could just be, it's a never ending list, really.
Oh,
I mean, we talked about some of the very basic ones, showing, don't tell, stay away from tropes. We talked about don't use the trite overused phrases.
active versus passive.
Absolutely.
Which is really worth the whole podcast, because that's a tough one. Active versus passive.
Yeah. And again, knowing, it's one of those things that's kind of like deep point of view. When you know it seems pretty easy to see. I mean, you'll still it'll pop up in your writing, but when you know it, you get it. But until you
get it,
yes,
yeah.
you just don't
get it.
You just don't get it. So yes,
is there any hope for us, Robyn? That's what we need to know.
There's always hope
that we're actually going to get through.
Yes,
and learn all of these and eliminate them from our writing.
Yes, one of the thing, I just read a friend's new published book, and I'm not going to say the name because I'm going to say something that she had it professionally edited. I mean, it was professionally edited, and there were things in it that I thought, oh my goodness, we shouldn't have had that in there. One of them was the use of the phrase "try and."
Oh,
so somebody went to try and do something in it.
They didn't just try it.
No.
They tried and.
No. They try and.
Ooh. I'm surprised an editor didn't pick
yes,
that
and
up.
there was a couple of them in there. And that's one of those things. We talked about this list that I have hanging on my wall, the things that I check for.
Mm-hmm.
That's
overused words.
Oh, yes,
phrases.
exactly. And things that I specifically do.
Mm-hmm.
So because I lived in England I've lived 10 years of my life in England, I use the word lovely all the time. I use the word rubbish all the time. She likes me to use the word, because she uses the word knackered all the time.
Knackered, because I read a lot of British type stuff and they're always knackered.
Yes.
And nobody here knows what that is.
Except for me.
Right.
Now. But I don't use it in my writing.
I don't use it in my writing.
But I do overuse the words lovely and rubbish. And I use them in a context that is slightly different than an American would be. So I have this whole list of things that I need personally to check for. But then there's a couple things that are just good to check for.
Right.
And one of them is the try and. Now there's a whole list of phrases like that. Just so everybody knows, you try to do something. You don't try. If you try and you do it,
but
that
you
means
don't
something
even try
different.
to do it. You could just try it.
Yes, but
go ahead.
Yeah, you could say.
I was going to say, well, I tried skydiving.
Yeah,
I didn't try to skydive.
Yeah,
I tried skydiving and I hated it.
And that's a way of making tighter writing. There's I can't even imagine. I'm getting dizzy. I'm afraid of heights. But the thought, you're right. There's sometimes when you just are going to try the thing. There's sometimes that try to, but the phrase, it's an incorrect phrase to use try and. So there's plenty of websites out there that talk about overused or misused. I think, I can't remember if I told you this story, and maybe it was in one of our writing groups. I was in AP English back in the day, way
Just
back
10
in the
minutes
day.
ago.
Yeah, exactly. 10 minutes ago and 5,000 years. And after our first, writing was my thing, was my jam even back in high school.
Me too.
And so I was pretty, excited about our first essay thing, whatever it was, that was our assignment. And we walk into class after that first assignment was graded, and I knew we were going to get it back. And my teacher was standing on back to the class, writing out things on the blackboard. And after I settled down, I looked up and I realized she's writing phrases that were incorrectly written phrases. They were just plain wrong. And to my mortification, probably half of them were mine. So she didn't put Robyn wrote this and Robyn wrote that. And I was hoping, because I mean, you could feel the collective blush in this group of very intelligent, AP English, advanced placement English students. So I'm hoping that the half that were mine, other people also made those errors.
Well, you would think.
But there were things, and this one wasn't mine, but there was somebody who had, it was a doggy dog world.
Doggy dog?
Doggy dog.
Doggy dog?
Not dog eat dog. First of all, that's a trite phrase. You should never use it anyway. But, because that's one of the things we talked about. Eliminate overused trite phrases. But yeah, mine was, I'm blushing just now thinking about it. For all intensive purposes.
You did not.
I thought that was what it was. And for somebody who read voraciously at a high level, how I didn't know the phrase is actually for all intents and purposes. I was mortified. I was absolutely mortified.
Which you probably could have eliminated, which would have tightened up
exactly.
Which is what we're
if
talking
I had
about.
known about it, I would never put that phrase in there. But there are just pages of those kinds of phrases. Do a little research.
The thing that I notice I do a lot is use the word just.
Yes.
So that's kind of my go-to word. And I have to go and do a word search and see where can I get rid of it.
Go and do.
Oh,
go do it. See, she put an and in there.
But you said she was writing. You said you said my teacher was writing on the board. No, your teacher wrote on the board.
You know what? Look at us. We're editing.
We're editing each other's words.
We're giving you good examples. But this is the stuff that we do because our informal speech
is different than our writing.
Totally different. And we speak mostly, unless we're in posh, England, yes. We don't speak correctly. The number of times I was watching one of those, my husband loves genealogy, and we were watching one of those, I don't think it was maybe Who Do You Think You Are or something. And there are people they're super intelligent and articulate. And the number of times they said, my husband and I, when it should have been me, drove me crazy. They want to sound more posh, but the phrase was incorrect. But we do that when we speak.
We do.
We just don't really care so much about good grammar when we speak.
Which is fine when you're speaking, but when you're writing, it's really important to make sure that you are writing tight and that your writing's concise and that every word is worth $1.
Absolutely.
We discussed in the previous one on writing tips.
And a bonus, just so you know how to figure that out, if you could take in a sentence the other person that you're talking about, you'll know whether to use I or me. So if it was my husband and I
went.
No, he gave something to my husband and I. That's incorrect because if you took out husband in, he gave something to I. So that's how you tell. So nobody go forth. That's my gift to you all. Go forth and never make that mistake again. All right. Some other things that you can do to write, to improve your writing and make it stronger and tighter is, I love this word, don't pontificate. Pontificate is
now I do know what that means.
Yeah, well, you are clever.
I just didn't know trope.
Which is a small little word. That's funny. But it's basically pontificating is trying to be a little bit too much to use a big word, a fancy word, when a simple word would do.
Correct.
So she wanted to utilize the beach ball. She wanted to use the beach, just use.
She wanted to play with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the only time that using those bigger words would come in is if you're using dialogue for somebody who is very
absolutely
like an attorney or a judge, and they might say, I would like to utilize this time to
absolutely
blah, blah, blah.
And there was a time that they would say, if you're writing to academics, so if you're writing some nonfiction academic college level book, but even now they're saying, yeah, we don't need to impress each other.
Yeah.
Just write the simplest word that will serve your purpose. Now, there are some more complicated words that have color and nuance that are beautiful and are better choices.
But
so
you have to look and say, does it improve my writing?
Exactly.
Or does it suck me out because all of a sudden I'm thinking, what is that word?
And if you're writing, we have a mutual friend who's one of the most intelligent men that I know. But when he writes and he's writing for, regular folk, but his vocabulary, he's so smart, he doesn't even know that he's writing, has words
ubiquitous. It's an ubiquitous
exactly.
time.
So
like, what?
So, modern people, just regular folk, and you just need simpler words. So you have to be paying attention to that. And that kind of ties into one of the other things I often get people who are writing and they're writing about something they feel comfortable with, and they feel like they're on top of the topic and they're able to share emotionally, will sound like they're just talking to you across the table with a cup of tea in their hand. Mm-hmm. But when they get into an area they feel uncomfortable, they feel like they should know more, they want to look like they have kind of a level of expertise, or they're trying to kind of guard the emotional difficulty of talking about the topic, they will often turn into Professor somebody. So they'll go from, your friend sitting with, you at Starbucks to somebody who is looking kind of down a little
Professor
bit.
Professor Smarty Smart.
Exactly. Don't do that, because as soon as you start the professorial kind of approach, you're going to use bigger words. You're going to use phrases that really don't mean anything, but they sound good.
Make you sound really smart.
Exactly. And when you sound academic, you're usually not writing as tightly as you could. So if you find yourself flipping into professorial mode, maybe that's a little bit of a red flag for you to say, wow, am I afraid of sharing my emotions there? Mm-hmm. Or especially in Christian writing, a lot of people get worried about, well, if I don't sound like I came out of the womb, knowing all the chapters of the Bible and never making a mistake, then I don't have any right to speak on a topic. Mm-hmm. So they want to sound knowledgeable in a way, but sometimes, because the reality is I didn't come out of the womb knowing nothing, So I want somebody to come alongside me that earns my respect as a reader and lets them impart wisdom into my life. Whereas somebody who comes across as too academic and too, I've never made any mistakes, Mary Poppins kind of attitude, the writing becomes inaccessible for me. And mm-hmm. you can't write strong and tight if you're not accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very important to just sound like a regular person. I mean, yes, you need to write tight, but also don't write too tight that you end up losing all of the emotion, that you end up losing all of the sense of sensitivity to whatever it is that you're writing about.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we talked about this in a previous podcast. You're going to end up sounding like, and Monday she went to the store, and Tuesday she played bridge, and Wednesday she did this. And, you're going to, that's really tight writing, but it's also really boring.
Exactly. And the difference between tight/strong writing and writing that is minimalistic, they're chasms. You can have a volume of tight writing and 5 words of minimalistic writing. So tight doesn't mean less words. Mm-hmm. It means making sure they all do
making sure
work.
That every word has a job to do.
Exactly. One of the other things that is kind of, I find it's more of an advanced kind of a concept. If you feel like your writing has gotten in a scene, particularly in fiction, but it can be a narrative nonfiction, creative nonfiction as well. If you are getting kind of called on the wordiness thing, like you're waffling a little bit, it's not often, but it's a possible red flag that you're in the wrong POV. Because if you're feeling like in order to get all of the information that needs to be conveyed in a scene, and you're just you keep writing it and adding to it and trying to get all that, you might be in the wrong point of view. So one character looking through their eyes is the point of view. And if, for example, we were writing about something that we both share, because we talked about this a number of times, that we both lost a son. And if I'm writing it from my point of view, but you had a completely different experience, because I lost my son as an infant, you lost your son as an adult, and I'm trying to get both of our mm-hmm. perspective into something, but only from my point of view. And I had to say, and I bet Jane was thinking all along, you had one experience and I had a separate experience. And, you're trying to put that kind of stuff in that is just really difficult to know. It may be that you're in the wrong point of view. Maybe that needs a third person point of view. Maybe the point of whatever you're trying to say really is about an older child being lost, and you're the one to share that and have mm-hmm. that point of view. So it's a little bit of a more advanced kind of a technique. But if you feel like you're kind of flailing and you don't feel like you've said everything you need to say, so you just keep writing, and you get your volume of writing increases, but you haven't quite nailed mm-hmm. what you're trying to do, think about point of view and see if
And
you're right.
that's a really good, that's a good writing technique as well. If you are, so let's just say you're working on a novel and you're writing a scene, try writing the same scene from the other person's point of view.
Yes.
And like you said, I found this really helpful recently because I was writing this very intensely emotional scene and I kept saying, I don't want to write it from her point of view. I'm going to write it from his. I don't want her to stop. She can't do this because I'm writing from him. But really, I needed to stop and then write the scene from her point of view to express all of that emotion and all of the angst and all of that stuff that that needed to come out. I mean, he did have a say, but she had the point of view, which can also keep your writing tight. Instead of me trying to like force words into his mouth and force him to feel this and to say this, I just had to switch it.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. And you don't have to write every chapter in the same point of view. You can have multiple point of view characters. So don't just go, what is going to, carry me through the entire story from one point of view. Sometimes you can employ different points of view too, but find the one that serves it best. That's a great technique. And that's something I've been really learning over the last year, how to let go of because again, we're planners. So letting go of what I expected to do, I expected to write it from this point of view and this is the way it was going to go, to be free to, and sometimes it even tells me what my own character, if I want to keep it in my character's point of view, writing it from somebody else's shows me what the other person is seeing in me. So then I'm able to articulate it better from the original point of view. So there's all sorts of, we should talk about point of view too. I think we should start a podcast so we can talk about these things. Okay.
Why not?
We've got
nobody else. No, yeah, let's do it.
One of the last tips that we're going to talk about today is simply reading aloud, reading your work aloud.
So hard and threatening.
It is.
Even to yourself.
It absolutely. I read almost every single word that I write aloud to myself. And especially when I feel like I'm kind of almost there, not quite, I'm kind of struggling. I ask my husband to read things to me that I've written because...
Oh, do you cringe? I would cringe.
Well, I do cringe a little bit, but he does have a British accent, so it's a lot easier than just anybody reading. He softens the blow, but when you're writing onto a page, there is something in your own head that is saying, and this will be emphasized, and I would take a pause there, and kind of thing, and I would say this phrase in this way, but if that's not down on the page,
or if it's not alluded to or indicated by a beat or some sort of attribute. You're not, you as the reader are not going to know, she meant for me to pause there and consider that for a moment. Exactly.
And so hearing somebody else's reading of your work, although painful, I would rather read my own work because I can act it, I can mold it in the direction that I want it to go. It's harder for me to hear somebody else read my writing because then red flags of, wrong word, or, that was passive.
That sounded horrible.
Yeah, it just burst off the page. But what a wonderful skill to have. And it doesn't work. I'll just tell you right now, I know that there is on most computers, Microsoft Word has it where you can have them read aloud your writing. That is not, no.
Yeah, that's a computer.
That's a computer. He's not interpreting anything. He's just reading words like a computer. So you need a human being who would actually be a reader.
I was just thinking, I think I'm going to use my computer.
Yeah.
No.
I'm going to partially take that back. For a final real draft, I would say, no, you've got to have a real life person do it. But there is actually value. I have had things read to me aloud, and even though it does sound a little bit like this and they are just writing the words, even that you can pick up some problems. Okay. But reading aloud yourself first and then other people will help you go, I don't know why I put that sentence in there, or gosh, that was a very long sentence to say 2 words worth of
Yeah.
information.
You'll cut that down.
Yeah, you'll hear it in a different way that will help you then edit, make it tighter. So
Great
just another
tips.
handful
Those
of
are
tips.
Great tips, Robyn. Thank you.
You're welcome so much.
And this has been The Art of Semi-Fiction, where we explore every corner of the written word. I'm Jane Daly.
And I'm Robyn Miller. And thank you for listening. And if you would not mind, please subscribe and like us.